Hi, everybody. This is Jim from the Pain PT. Good to see everybody here today. I have another success story, which I know you guys like and you guys really enjoy and help so many people. I have Lucy here from across the pond here in Dublin. Lucy, nice to see you today.
Yeah, lovely to see you, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Yeah, I'm really happy you're willing to come on and share your story. I think every story is unique and helpful for people who are trying to recover. I know I get a lot of feedback from people that they love to watch success stories. So I'm going to turn it over to you so you can share yours.
Yeah, sure. Um, so I had chronic symptoms for quite a long time, actually. They started at the age of 12, but I see it in two different periods of my life. So I had chronic pain and some other chronic unexplained symptoms from the age of 12 to 27. And when I was 27, I got long COVID, which was also diagnosed as chronic fatigue syndrome. And that was 3 years of, I suppose, a different ball game in terms of the impact it had on my life. Um, so, in terms of the first period when I was younger, the way that my symptoms would manifest mostly was I'd get an injury. I was very sporty. I'd get an injury and then it would appear to have been an injury. Looking back now, I don't think there was any really serious injury. You know, nothing was broken, nothing was torn. Um, but then the pain just remained. And so when I was in my 20s, I had an ankle injury for 5 years. I had another kind of injury in the ball of my foot, or at least what I thought at the time were injuries. Pain in the ball of my foot for 5 years. When I was 12, it began with neck pain, and I'd been told I'd torn a muscle in my neck by the doctor. But then, I went through lots of different investigations, and there were no real findings on scans and things like that. And that then turned into back pain through my teenage years. And I was also getting other unexplained symptoms, like I got ear infections from swimming in the sea, and the pain remained. And anytime I got water in my ears, it would come back as if it was another ear infection, even though there was no infection. The pain would be very intense. Um, and I had bladder pain. I had generally a very sensitive body in the sense of my muscles were always tense and tight. And if I went to a physio, they'd say, "Oh, your nervous system is um, affected." But I was never given any kind of information about what I could do about that or
Yeah,
how
back
I
then you
could.
didn't have any idea about this. You just, these things will
Yeah.
just eventually kind of go away over some length of time or.
Yeah. So usually it would kind of turn into another symptom. Another injury
Okay.
would come, and
Yeah.
then the pain from one injury would end up, all of my attention would go onto the new injury and the new pain. Um,
So the
and
symptom imperative was like happening for you even back then. Yeah. Yeah, it makes
yeah,
sense, right? Your body's on edge, it's tight, it's tense, it's in that protection mode. And so yeah, this is what we see, right? It goes from this one to this one. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And I think then you struggle to trust your body. So I would find sports that I could do um during those years, but also um I was scared to take a job that would involve lots of walking whilst I had the ankle pain, or I didn't want to go traveling. I also had a lot of food intolerances. So um, I was worried that if I went traveling, there wouldn't be enough variety of things I could eat, or like I wouldn't be able to stay on my feet all day long if I wanted to walk around. So it was, even though I was able to work and generally function pretty well, there were ways that it was impacting me or making me
Yeah.
fear,
A lot of fear
taking
and worry that
chances.
was in your brain. That sounds like that it built up right around these
Yeah,
different symptoms.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think when pain comes as a child and it's unexplained, you can see your parents worrying, your parents trying to fix it by paying lots of money on different treatments. And there's kind of a sense of fear that comes just from witnessing that, and also a sense of guilt maybe as well, that they're, trying to fix it but they can't, and that they've spent a lot of money trying to fix it. So yeah, so it was generally an ongoing thing where often if I met a friend, they'd say, "Oh, what's wrong with you now?" They just, in a nice way, they knew that there would always be something, some problem, some pain, what they'd ask me, what can you eat at the moment? Because there was always something going on. And so then in 2020, I got COVID, and I was already aware of what chronic fatigue syndrome was, but and so I did fear that my symptoms were lasting a long time, and that maybe it was chronic fatigue syndrome, or that the symptoms had become chronic. But the first year it was relatively mild, so I could still work, and I was just trying to get by, hoping for the best, hoping it would just disappear and go away. And so those symptoms were fatigue, migraines, orthostatic intolerance, uh, um, a lot of chest pain, a lot of chest tightness, a lot of heart palpitations, a lot of dull, aching pain in the left side of my chest that would just be there for a long time. And that then ended up getting worse in 2021. So I'd actually moved to a new city and a new job. I was working in the area of mental health. Um, and my symptoms just started getting worse where I couldn't go to work. I was struggling to do my food shop. And so at the time I was living in the UK in England, and I moved back to Dublin, so that the idea was, in my head I was thinking it'll just be 2 months and I'll be better, and I'll go back and I'll have rested and I'll feel much better. But actually, it was quite a stressful experience coming back, because people around me didn't understand it.
Mm.
And so I ended up getting worse and getting very fearful of how severe it might get. So during my worst period, I was, so the year of 2021, I was mostly in bed. I could walk to the bathroom, but I couldn't walk downstairs. Or if I walked around the garden, I would be affected for weeks. So I'd have a
Wow.
migraine, the fatigue would be much worse. Um, I couldn't talk to a friend on the phone. That would, again, just be the cognitive energy of that would affect me so much, that it wasn't worth it. Um, and then other little things, like I downloaded Duolingo and thought, oh, maybe like I'll practice my Spanish. But after 2 minutes of doing very simple exercises, I had a migraine. So very little would push me over the edge into worse symptoms. And um, the fatigue, I kind of explain it like as if your body is shutting down. It's a very intense feeling where I suppose it's just so different to normal tiredness. And
Mm.
the word fatigue or tiredness doesn't really even fully explain it to someone who's never had that symptom. So yeah, that particular time, it was very lonely. It was very scary because I kept going through my mind, what if I need to be hospitalized? What if I'm not able to feed myself? Um, and some of that fear and concern was also around, will others support me? Will others understand enough? Will they believe me? Because with these symptoms, people don't always believe you. And that's kind of very triggering when you're relying on people to help you with your basic needs.
Yeah, so you're kind of
Um,
could feel you're very frightened, very scared. You're very sensitized at that point, and you could feel a bit ashamed, I imagine too, right? People don't understand me. You feel like something's wrong with you, right? Like,
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think it was really affecting me taking time off work because I was someone who never took a sick day and was always very diligent, very uh, organized, would do my job to, the highest standard I could all of the time. So there was shame about needing time off and also not really knowing how that was viewed in terms of do they think I'm actually unwell or do they believe me that I need this time? And yeah, so it was a difficult period. In 2022, I started feeling a bit better, so I could walk around the house.
during that
And
time, what did you do? Anything during that time from 21 to 22 to start feeling a little better?
so I started taking a medication called low dose naltrexone. And I don't know how much of it was the medication or how much of it was like my belief that this medication was going to make a big difference, because I did have high expectations that it would help me.
Hmm.
Um, and so it helped, whether it was the medication or whether it was
The
generally my
placebo. I mean,
mindset.
high expectations
Yeah,
means some placebo. Plus, it could add some medication effect. But yeah,
yeah,
if you have a high expectation, it's going to help you. That certainly
yeah,
helped.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it did make a huge difference because I think when you're so debilitated in bed all of the time, even if, for instance, it was a family member's birthday, they might be celebrating downstairs and I wouldn't have been able to go downstairs. So just being able to walk around the house, watch some TV, go for a very short walk, those and meet a friend. I could meet a friend for about an hour. So there were still big events like friends' weddings that I couldn't go to, or it would be a big deal if I was to have to leave the house. I would get symptoms um, and feel pretty awful afterwards. But just being able to walk around the house and have a slightly better quality of life did make a big difference. So that year was a bit easier. And also it meant I could read a bit more, research some different things that could help. I had always been open to the idea of the mind body approach, but initially I didn't fully resonate with the fear cycle. Um, so I had read some books and I'd come across some online courses that talk about the mind body approach. Not as in the depth that I then eventually read into it. So it was like little tidbits of information that touched on, for instance, the fear cycle and how fear could impact your symptoms. And the reason I couldn't fully relate with that initially was there were times when I kind of felt really optimistic, felt encouraged and had a new sense of hope and thought, okay, I'm gonna go and walk around the garden now. And it would end really badly, even though I had noticed no fear or negative emotions. So later on, I realized that that was because some of those emotions were out of my awareness or were repressed.
Yeah,
But at
unconscious.
the time, yeah, so at the time it was um, one of the reasons why I was maybe a bit hesitant to uh, like to, I suppose, applying the approach to myself or understanding how the approach applied to me. Um, so in late 2022, I came across John Sarno's book, The Mind Body Prescription. And for me, that book was a huge turning point just because the idea of repressed emotions was something I hadn't considered before or realized. So even though I had worked in the past in the area of psychology and mental health, I thought I was very self-aware. I thought I was a self-reflective person, but uh, I hadn't realize actually that I was all of this time repressing emotions and not fully aware of my emotions. So just learning that idea kind of opened up a door of curiosity for me to
Did you get
explore.
any positive effect afterward just by reading the book?
Um, yeah, so I think my symptoms didn't just disappear and go away, but I think my level of hope went from, 20% to um, 90%. So I think just that change alone had a huge beneficial impact because I could see a way forward. I think before that, I was hoping I could eventually get better, but I didn't know how. And without knowing how, I think that was, yeah, that was holding me back or impacting my ability to just see myself as well and imagine that happening.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So that was an opening into a further understanding, really shifted your mind to think, oh, wow, there's something I didn't consider. So you basically at that point kind of believe too that, okay, I think this is true, that there's something to this about these emotions.
Yeah, I did. And I don't know why I necessarily resonated so much with the idea of repressed emotions because with repressed emotions, it's sometimes I describe it like being in a dark room and you don't know what you're looking for and you're just feeling your way around and you can't see anything. So it's really an unusual experience to start reflecting on repressed emotions because you didn't feel the emotion in the first place. Um, so I don't know why it resonated as a possibility that, oh, maybe this is happening for me. I think one aspect that really helped was the personality description in John Sarno's book as well, because I would have always been a perfectionist, someone who was striving to achieve things all of the time, a people pleaser. So I think the description and having an understanding of how these symptoms can come about, by the brain and the nervous system helped me to just understand it in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Most people say that you resonated with, like you said, the personality traits and you saw them in yourself. So I think that's why the power of his books, where people could see themselves, that's me, and so then it creates that hope, like you said, or belief that, hey, okay, this is what it is. And then it can give you a boost, right? Or it can give you that boost to move forward. So
Yeah.
from that book, then what happened after that?
Yeah. So I had read a few IFS, internal family systems books just before that. So I had started to implement this internal family systems um, model. So the idea of internal family systems is that we have lots of different parts of us. So a people pleaser part, a perfectionist part. And I used this approach to try to become aware of my emotions. So I reflected on, I'd ask myself when symptoms would get worse, does any part of me uh, feel a negative emotion right now? So it might be that on one hand, I felt fine, and my initial response would be, no, actually, I feel fine, like nothing's wrong. And then I'd have to ask again or reflect a little bit harder, does one little part of me actually feel a bit anxious right now? Or does one part of me feel sad about something? So that way of reflecting really helped me, I think, because maybe I have some, if you want to use those analogies, I maybe have some parts of me that are used to just getting on with things and not um, even relating to having a challenge or having a negative emotion. So I could kind of put those parts to one side, the parts that always think I'm fine, I could just kind of notice those parts and then also consider is there another part experiencing something? And so I would do this before I did any new activity. And I would also do it maybe during a new activity that I wasn't used to doing, and afterwards, and also whenever symptoms were worse. So it was just a way of reflecting. And sometimes I wouldn't necessarily come up with anything. So it's a little bit arbitrary. There's not always an answer, but often I would notice maybe a small part of me is feeling anxious about doing this new activity that I haven't done in a long time and that my body has reacted to many times over the past few years. Um, and so then if I notice that anxiety, I would just hold some space for it, some compassion for it, and notice that it's there, and I suppose normalize that this is normal, okay, understandable, given what I've been through, and given that my body has been really reactive, in the past few years, and then I would just try to hold space and try to help give my body and brain messages of safety as well. Um, so that was really helpful. And now and again, I would notice a bigger emotion like anger or yeah, or sadness or a sense of loss. So and often it would start by me thinking, oh, actually, I feel fine. But I'd
Mm.
have to dig a little bit deeper, and then I would notice those emotions. And I suppose that was just a really helpful framework for me to work from in terms of slowly starting to increase my activity. So I started to go for slightly longer walks, even though at the time that I read the book, I was able to go for a 15-minute walk. I then decided I was going to start going for really short runs. And so I felt
This is after the book, after Sarno's book.
this is after Sarno's book. And I think at the time I had maybe a certain level of stability and trust in my body. I know for everyone it's a different experience and everyone needs to go at their own pace for what's appropriate for them at a given time. But um, it was a very, very short, like 2-minute jog. And my symptoms would flare a lot. Like sometimes during or afterwards, I would feel really anxious with the overwhelming experience of fatigue and like a headache and different things that were coming on. Um, but I kept it short, and then I worked really hard afterwards to reassure myself I was safe, to just notice any feelings of anxiety, frustration, disappointment, and just hold space for that without letting those feelings take over or suck me into a negative loop. And um, the symptoms would increase and I'd feel a bit worse, but then they would die down again. And I would the next day be able to do normal day-to-day activity. Um, I'd still have symptoms, but so I was kind of um, moving forward in terms of challenging myself as much as I felt I could manage the fear and the increase in symptoms at a given time. And then I would, so I was maybe going for one short run a week initially. And I started to drive after not having driven in a long time. So that was another kind of thing out of my comfort zone.
You were
Um,
starting to this point. I think it's good for the audience to listen, and I'm trying to take it in that you started to believe, first of all, that you were okay, right? So you had some more confidence, and then okay, I'm going to start to challenge this a little more, which you did, and you were getting some kickback, right, of some symptoms. But it sounds like you had the base of understanding that okay, I'm going to keep going, right? You didn't pull back, right? Whereas in the past, you probably would have pulled back from
yeah.
doing these things.
Yeah, I think one of the really key helpful parts for me was just the trust that the symptoms were caused by my brain and my nervous system and fear or other emotions. So I think once I could really start to trust that, and of course, it's hard to believe that all of the time, you'll have different ideas coming to your mind, like, is this really physical? And you'll have doubts that come. But I think that helped me a lot with just having a sense of power over the situation. Because before then, I didn't know why the symptoms were getting worse. And I didn't really know if it could have been something physical that hadn't been found, or I'd been given no medical explanation, as most people don't get with these symptoms and these conditions. So um, yeah, but there's a lot of information out there about trying to be careful with how much energy you spend and trying to pace, and that exercise or energy expenditure is dangerous. So I think when you're under that uh, belief system or that premise, you naturally feel like you've made a mistake or you've made the wrong decision to do activity. When your body then reacts afterwards. Whereas with this new perspective after reading John Sarno's book and then reading more into the mind body approach, I was realizing that that I'm still safe and it's still okay, and it's just a pattern that I'm trying to unlearn. That if my body reacts after activity, it's just going to take time for me to rewire that or unlearn that
Yeah,
response.
that's massive what you just said. This is a pattern I need to unlearn, which I think is so true. It is a brain sensitization pattern, a memory pattern, right? It's been learned, it's been conditioned. So having that right, that correct mindset, I always tell people that's so important, because if the old mindset is, oh no, what did I do? I did too much. This must be bad. I better not do that again. And then any kind of avoidance, right? It makes it worse. So you have the right mindset in place, which is super important. And then it sounds like you're able to, okay, I'm going to start moving forward now. Because it sounds like,
Yeah.
yeah, your body was reacting, but you didn't allow it to completely stop you.
Yeah, that's right. There were some times where I was wondering, why is my body still reacting? I've been going for this short run every week for, 4 weeks now, and my body is still reacting afterwards. And similar with other different activities I was doing, there were times when I was thinking, oh, why is it still happening? But I just had to keep trying to make it safe, or frame it in a way that felt safe. So one of the things I told myself was, this is an adjustment phase, you know, because sometimes I couldn't notice an emotion that explained my body reacting after activity. And maybe I had noticed some fear, but there was nothing, I didn't notice any, buried anger that then resolved that symptom increase after that activity. So but by telling myself, okay, this is an adjustment period, it's going to go away eventually. I'll just keep going. That helped a lot. So there was 6 months of
It's so
symptom.
good to hear that. Not that I want you to take 6 months, but for people
Yeah.
listening, that I tell people it can take time for your brain to desensitize, right? And sometimes it's just that, like, yeah, there is some built, probably some deep unconscious fear, learning, association, memory, that it's amazing how powerful our brains are, right? They will hold on to this for a long time, and you have to repeatedly show it over many times for it to quiet down. So it's nice for the audience to see that it took you not, 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months for,
Yeah.
but you didn't give up on what you were doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was, and that's where it can be normal to experience some sense of doubt. But I think I generally had trust that I was moving in the right direction. And I think also the IFS language or the parts language can be really helpful, because sometimes we can have a perfectionist part, or I mean, even if you don't use IFS language, you can just say perfectionism. They kind of will sneak in and say, oh, this is a sign you're failing and you're not doing it well enough, or that you're not, like that this is a sign that your recovery is not going well. And I think it's just so important, or it was so important for me to be aware of anything like that, and to try to actually keep reminding myself this is a normal part of the process to have symptoms come up during this time, and that it's okay, and that the response to those symptoms is the most important. The reminding myself I'm safe is part of the rewiring that it's and I think that's really challenging because it's not yeah, if we're used to working to goals where our progress can seem much more linear, or we just need to tick
Mhm.
this box and then tick that box and then tick that box. But I think with recovery, it's using a new skill set, and it does require a lot of patience and um, self-compassion
I
and
was about to
just
say that word. If you already took the word out of my mouth, I was going to say it sounds like self-compassion, which really the other emotion you're alluding to is shame. When you're
mm,
thinking, I'm a failure, I can't do it, I'm not doing it right. Like that's a powerful emotion. So self-compassion, right, is the antidote for shame. So you using that and being patient and kind, right? You were working through an emotion. You just probably didn't
yeah,
realize it
yeah, yeah,
as you were
yeah,
going back. Because it's such a powerful one that I'm broken, something's wrong with me, a failure.
yeah.
But it sounds like you beautifully did it, in terms of sticking with that.
Yeah, and I think actually this was one of the first times in my life I had actually started to understand how I could be self-compassionate, or how I could hold space for myself, or even the idea of believing that my body is healthy and that it's safe to trust my body and safe to feel okay and to believe that my body won't react to something was just a completely new perspective. Because I had, since the age of 12 been doubting that my body was okay, um and had never got feedback from doctors. I suppose some doctors may have said, "Oh, you are actually okay," but it didn't feel like, "Oh, you're okay. You can trust your body, like you're safe." It wasn't kind of the full explanation of what was going on. Um, but then, yeah, coming across this approach just really helped me to start to really see and build up the evidence that my immune system is okay. My body is okay to do normal activities, that my body will respond like anyone else's body to
Hmm.
um, a virus, just to, I suppose, just see my body as strong and capable and healthy.
Yeah, that's so important. And I like the way you said that. It's like the way I teach it too, is that you're teaching your brain and self that you're okay again, that there isn't anything wrong with you. Like that's the sort of approach you want to take. Not that there's something wrong with me, I need to fix, but you were okay all along. But it's just reestablishing that right in yourself, in your brain, and your body, that you can do these things, that you're not broken, right? You're okay.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think that's been such a relief, to have just realized that, and to be able to trust and to have tools that work. I think one of the really brilliant things about this approach is that it gives you the tools to know what to do if a symptom comes up in future, and not kind of worry or spiral downwards. It's giving you back the power to stay well for life. And of course, it's normal to get another mind body symptom now and again, and you just need to acknowledge that there's something going on that you're not paying attention to, or use a tool that you found helpful. But I think, yeah, for me, it's I think I've had a lot of um relief in just knowing that now I'm okay, and I can, if something comes up, I know I'll be okay in future as well.
Yeah. So kind of a lot more self-confidence, confidence in your body and yourself, right? What you didn't have before, like when you were saying when you were younger, 12, 13, you were in a lot of fear. You were living in
Yeah.
that sort of, oh no, I hope this doesn't get worse. And now you're talking from a different place of that confidence and that I can handle this, right? And it's going to be all right. So it's a big transition you made, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, a huge transition. Yeah, it's been amazing. You know, I've been having to pinch myself sometimes just with realizing how much has changed. And I think when I got long COVID, I did have hope that I would recover, but I didn't realize that in finding this approach, then I'd also learn what was going on with my chronic pain and the other chronic unexplained symptoms. So when I actually started running after the chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID, I still had a foot, um, I was going to say injury, but I suppose pain that had been there for years. And I think it was really powerful for me to realize, to see that I could run and actually the pain wasn't getting worse and it wasn't sore to run on. Um, because that problem had been there for such a long time. And maybe my belief in the chronic pain going was um, uh, less than my belief in the chronic fatigue and long COVID going away. Um, you know, once I came across the mind body approach in John Sarno's book, I had hope for the pain as well to go. But I think it was um yeah, it was really powerful evidence for me. And I suppose it was like a huge cherry on top because you know, I could go back to sports that I you know, hadn't been able to do for a long time as well.
Yeah. So you applied that same information, knowledge using IFS and this work into the other ones as well. So they started to go down as well as you kept
Yeah,
challenging,
yeah.
facing.
So the main pains that were remaining at the time were a pain in the ball of my foot, and that did go very quickly. And then I mean it was there for maybe a couple of weeks, but I was just noticing all of the inconsistencies that it wasn't always there, and I had shoulder pain, and that also, when I started swimming again, I realized, and also I realized that actually, you know, that it wasn't as bad as I had thought. A lot of it was my mindset around the initial injury of my shoulder and how a physio had once told me that the muscle was torn, the muscle wouldn't have repaired. And I just reflected on all of that information and thought, actually, I'm not sure if that's the case. I think it probably has healed, and I was just fearing that it was injured and fearing the pain. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so that helped hugely. And uh yeah, luckily then I those pains did go away pretty quickly. Also the food intolerances went away pretty quickly as well. Um
Yeah. It's amazing.
so
It can
yeah.
go that quick. I would just love the audience to hear that. I call it an upward spiral. Once you get going, these things that you can see them, they can go away quite quickly. It doesn't have to take so long. You've had them for decades, right? But they
Yeah.
went away once you understood it. And also just the power of our brains, information you were told, beliefs, memories, right? You had your brain unconsciously was just operating off of those. It was nothing wrong with your body. And once you understand this stuff, it's pretty mind blowing and body blowing too. And in terms of change you can have, right? It's incredible.
Yeah, it really is incredible. I think I was lucky when I had long COVID to have a doctor that, even though he didn't give me anything other than medication, he did give me hope that I could recover. But when I was younger, I had seen many, many doctors and had been diagnosed with fibromyalgia twice. And both times I'd been given very little hope and kind of not advised to look anywhere other than just to take a medication they had prescribed, and that just it would be a lifelong condition. So at the time, I didn't even look into any alternative. I just thought I was going to be living with it. So I think yeah, just understanding and having some hope. And I mean, the internet is even though there's a lot of fear out there on the internet, it's also great in terms of finding people who are doing this work and explaining the mind-body approach and um, sharing recovery stories and, you know, um, explaining that recovery is possible and giving hope and yeah, explaining the process. I think it's just so it's so great to have that. And then also there's so many mind body books as well that um are helpful. And it's interesting because different books land differently with different people. And I know some people have read the same book as me and they didn't find it as powerful, but they found another book really powerful. So um yeah, I think it's always worth staying curious and just continuing to find information and figuring out how you can apply the approach to yourself because everyone does it a little bit differently, or they can find different tools help them more than others. And um, yeah, it's just it's there's lots of different ways of using the approach, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And you have to see what resonates for you. So you just
Yeah.
kind of, just to finish the rest of your story, you
Yeah.
started doing more and you just kept kind of doing more and more and more, and then you're seeing more success. Is that what basically happened? And how long did it take you to get back, you mean, to where you are right now?
Yeah. Yeah, so I had come across that book late 2022 and actually it was about this time 2 years ago that I came across that book. And then it took me, I suppose, until June or July to kind of fully feel like I was recovered. So I was building up activity like running and swimming. But actually, I think I had joined a triathlon club in May of 2023. Yeah. And I just started with the swimming and when I joined, I didn't tell anyone that I'd just been really unwell for a long time. I wanted to just not not have to talk about it because I didn't want it
Yeah.
to be kind of going round and round with people thinking I need to be careful with what I do. So yeah, so I think joining that club, I was thinking, yeah, I am recovering now. My body is responding well. I'm able to swim fine. I'm having no after symptoms afterwards, and or very slight symptoms that went pretty quickly. So um, yeah, and so I was just increasing everything. So starting to increase going out more, seeing friends more, starting to travel again, go for long drives. There was lots of different areas to build up and challenge and increase. And uh, yeah, um, so yeah, I think you really appreciate after being through something like that, you really appreciate living a normal life again and being able to just do normal, simple things like go for a hike or go for a swim.
Yeah, it's like you get out of jail. It's
Yeah.
a liberating feeling. So at this point, you got your life back. It sounds like you, right from where you were from the depths, you've come all the way back. And then, so what are you doing now as a result, currently?
Yeah, so I started actually coaching people using this mind body approach. So people with long COVID, chronic fatigue syndrome, other unexplained conditions or symptoms. And that's been really nice because it's just so rewarding. I mean, you must experience this yourself. Um, it's so rewarding seeing people improve and recover and start to do things again. And so that's been yeah, I've really been enjoying that. And then I've also been doing a lot of sport. So I did a couple of triathlons over the summer. And actually, about 15 years ago, I had said, if my pain ever resolves, I'll do a triathlon. And at the time, I didn't know how my pain was going to resolve, but I had kind
Yeah.
of planted that idea. So yeah, so I was working towards that over the summer and getting back into running, after not running for over 10 years. Um, so it's been really nice just to be able to be active and trust that my body will be fine with those activities, and also just hiking and traveling more. Going to I've been to Italy. I was going to say a couple of times. Oh yeah, it was a couple of times, and just eating like dairy and gluten and
Yeah, you can't
nice.
go to Italy without eating the good
Yeah,
food. I love Italy.
yeah, exactly. So even that felt like a huge win just in terms of having had the food intolerances for over 10 years. I it was never any fun going to an Italian restaurant with gluten and dairy intolerances.
Right,
So
right.
yeah.
Amazing. So eating everything, doing everything again. Yeah, it just really shows you the power of our brains that we can get back from things that are so debilitating, things that we don't think we can get over. We
Yeah.
can if we have the right tools and right understanding. So it's such awesome work. We'll put your link on the YouTube channel, so if people
Thank
want to
you.
reach
Yeah.
out to you, they can do that. I feel like it's such a great story. I love all the success stories, and yours is fantastic. Just you came back from basically the bottom, like most people, from a really low point, and a pretty long period of your whole life of having some types of symptoms, right? And
Yeah.
so that's a really powerful story to see you can get over all these different things using this work. Is there anything you want to say to the audience before you go?
Yeah. So I suppose just continue to work on this, and stay curious about how you can get there. I think this it does involve facing challenges to use this approach. I think some people, have a book cure and their symptoms go away really quickly. But for a lot of people, it does take time and it takes learning to live in a new way, which if we've lived in a certain way for our whole lives, it takes a while to kind of uh, un unlearn that and reprogram how we can live in a more relaxed way and also apply all of these tools. Um, and so, yeah, I would just encourage everyone to stay curious about how you can get there, and that it is possible. Different people find different aspects of the approach that will really resonate. And it's just about figuring out how it'll apply to you, or how you can apply it to your own day-to-day life.
Yeah, yeah, well said. And just to highlight again, it's the amount of time it takes to recover. It depends. It's variable. I mean, look, like you highlighted, which was really important, that doing just getting back to running or something, 6 months of, exposure and desensitizing. It took that long for your brain to feel safe to
Yeah,
calm down. So it can take time because our brains are so sensitive, right? And they're so protective. But so
yeah,
just for people that don't lose hope, like you said, to
yeah,
keep going, right?
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, it can take time, and and different people face different challenges throughout the way as well. We're not all the same, so there can be different life challenges going on and different circumstances that might be more challenging. And some people with other responsibilities like children, I was lucky I didn't have any dependents that I needed to care for during my recovery, and I could focus a lot of time and energy. Um, but regardless of what your challenge is, you can find a way to overcome the symptoms. And but yeah, it is different for everyone, and I think that's yeah, that's why it's good to have the self-compassion. We all have our own journey or own path to find our way out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Well, thank you so much for coming on the channel and sharing your story. I really appreciate it. And I think it's going to resonate with people out there. And we'll put your information on there so people can reach out to you if they'd like. And thanks so much again for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me.